Happy to still have you here, even though it's a very special topic. As Xenia said, like we've heard during the panel discussion a lot about, okay, we've already done the migration from PSA to project operations. We had hard times, maybe it was easy. And I'm a senior consultant and project manager at proMX for like 6 years now. And back in 2023, when the first upgrade path from PSA to project operations came up, I started looking into it because eventually I had a customer that was in need of doing the upgrade. Back then there was not much experience in the industry because it was like brand new. So I started digging in and I read all the documentation of Microsoft, which was valuable. And then I said, okay, maybe it's just clicking the upgrade button and then see what's going to happen. I mean, what else should I have done? So today, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a short introduction and then show you the upgrade stages. And you might be surprised, it is not just a click of a button. Right, so there is like many things that we need to do, and I'm going to guide you through the whole process of what is important, like everything where I stepped into failures. So I wrote everything down and put it together so that not every one of you who might be in the situation having to upgrade from PSA to project operations has to go through the same painful times. The third thing is possible errors during the upgrade and during the conversion of the projects after you upgrade it. Basically meaning you've successfully done the upgrade at some point if you've resolved all the errors that you might have had. And then when converting the projects, you might get even more errors. So I'm going to tell you everything about that one. And then also, some people forget about the deployment process, and I've seen many ideas of how we could deploy from dev to prod and to then have project operations in the productive system. And I set up basically the best possible deployment process, which I've tried it like 10 to 12 times, and I can tell you it works. Okay. So, why are we talking about this topic? Not only because some people are still in PSA and they might be happy with it, but also because project operations has more features and is much better. We've learned that already today. But there is one reason which is like most critical. So end of support for project service automation, I cannot even say was 2 days ago. Right, so there is an urgent need to look into it and to start planning the upgrade if you're still in project service automation. Important details that you should be aware of if you're still in PSA. You will not get any updates anymore, right? So the situation that you have in PSA now, that will be the situation that you will keep on having if you don't upgrade. Let's say you have an issue in PSA and you open a ticket with Microsoft. What's going to happen? The ticket will be worked on pretty fast by Microsoft saying, sorry, cannot support you. And they're going to close the ticket. They're going to ask you upgrade to project operations because we cannot fix this issue anymore. The third thing is, in normal scenarios, you can work with the light deployment, right? As soon as you have like resource or non-stocked in your PSA, you cannot use the light deployment. So you cannot just click the button and upgrade to project operations. In this session, we will focus on the most common case, which is the light deployment. In case you're working with resource non-stocked in PSA, just reach out to me after the session and we can run through it because it's a special scenario. And Probably the most important thing if you're still in PSA, good news is it will not stop working, right? So you can still use it, but you're highly discouraged of doing so. Why? There is no security updates anymore, and I think everyone will agree that this is kind of like a showstopper of keep on working with PSA. So everyone still using project service automation should plan today to upgrade to project operations, okay? So no time to wait anymore. Upgrade stages. Number one, so whenever customers reach out to us and say, okay, Anna, we are using a PSA, how much effort will it be in hours and in cost to upgrade to project service automation? We need to look into that because it highly depends. I'm going to go into detail. Once we have an effort estimation, we need to do some preparing steps. Then, this is my favorite one, data validation. I'm a big fan of data quality, but it's not only because I'm a fan, it's because data validation and good data quality is the key to successfully upgrade. Functionalities evaluation. So we've heard earlier that most of the companies say we'd like to stay very close to the standard of PSA or even project operations. But then again, we've done some customizations. I mean, everybody needs some customizations, more or less. So we need to look into those. And then we can finally start with the upgrade. And I've had discussions with customers where they've said, okay, great, that's an easy one. So we're done after we upgraded. And I was in a bad situation having to say, no, we're not done. So we have to do post-upgrade configurations. And on top of that, we have to do post-upgrade customizations. But then we're done, right? So it's not, as you can already see, it's not just done, okay, I open my environment, click on install project operations, wait a few hours and I'm done. It would be so nice if it worked, but it isn't. But that's what I'm here for. I'm going to tell you like all the problems that might occur and what you have to do to get a smooth transition. So effort estimation. The first thing we need to do is like to look at the system, right? How customized is the system? The more customizations you have, the bigger the effort might be. We then also need to look into, like, for example, how many JavaScripts do you have? There will also be deprecated fields with project operations. Like, have you worked in plugins or Power BI or something like that with those fields? The upgrade preparation. And it's a tiny thing, but it's so important. Price list item settings. It's just one tiny little flag in the entity. But if you have it set to false and you try to upgrade, you've done everything else correctly. If you have the wrong flag, the upgrade will not work. So the first thing that we always do is we check the flag of the price list item settings, right? If it has the wrong flag, we need to open a ticket with Microsoft to change it to true. Basically, it means that in the price list item entity that a new form can be created, because that is what the upgrade would do. If it's set to false, it's not possible, so the upgrade would fail. First-party plugins, also one of my favorites. If I say that in PSA there is Microsoft plugins that you might have had disabled, because it works better with them being disabled, you should know which ones you have disabled, because what's going to happen once you upgrade, they're going to be enabled. And then you think, okay, then I'm going to disable them again. No, doesn't work anymore. So you need to know, and you might consider, what customizations or changes will I have to make for my system to work with these plugins to be enabled. Had situations like that, it's not a problem, but you have to consider it, because you need to make sure that whatever you are working with in PSA still works in project operations. System capacity. I ran into this problem, so we've done everything, right? We checked everything, we made everything ready, started the upgrade, and after a while it failed because we didn't have enough capacity. Project operations needs more capacity than PSA, and I would say you need minimum 20% available capacity in your tenant. Better 40 to 50%, right? So that is worth checking. And then project cleanup, that is something that unfortunately you would have to do yourselves as the customers. With everything else we can support, but I cannot decide which projects might be finished or completed. So the more projects you have that are active, they will have to be converted afterwards. So if you have projects that are completed, deactivate them. The less active projects you have, the better for the upgrade. So it's worth running through and cleaning it up, right? And I've never ever had a customer that said, no, all our projects are fully up to date. Everyone was like closing projects, saying like, okay, we simply forgot to close it. So now data validation, and me being a fan of clear data, I spent so much time looking into this. So on the slide it says validation of incorrect data records. What does that mean, incorrect data records? When you look in the logs of, or in the documentation of Microsoft, it states like, limits in project operations, right? It started, for example, with you can have a maximum of 500 project tasks per project. In the meantime, it was changed to 1,500, and like very soon it's going to be updated to maximum 3,000 project tasks per project. And out of this, even on top of what is documented in the Microsoft documentation, I found a total of, I think it's 27, 28 things that you need to check to make sure that A, the upgrade works, and that B, converting the project works, right? You don't want to be in a situation where you have upgraded to project operations and start converting your projects and get error after error. That's why we have to check it up front to make sure that even when you're in project operations and you start converting your projects to project for the web, you don't get any errors. We can provide you like a full list of like what needs to be checked. It's like even tiny things. The project task name can have a maximum length of 255 letters, right? If you have 256, it will not work. So once you've checked everything, you might have an overview. Okay, I need to correct this and that in that project. So you correct all the data. You should correct the data in your dev environment, where you usually have like a little amount of data in comparison to prod. And you should also correct it in the prod environment. Once you've corrected it, or you thought you corrected it, rerun the data validation to cross-check. If you have one error in there, it will not work. So let's say, okay, we've completed the data validation and we're sure everything is okay. Keep in mind that in prod, it's not a static system, people work in there. So you might check at 9 a.m. in the morning, go back after lunch, and you might have another error. So it's like when you plan the upgrade, it's worth checking right before you start, is the data still clean in prod? Functionalities evaluation. So since the data model slightly changes from PSA to project operations, there is, yeah, I think I can say hundreds of all scheduling entities fields that will be deprecated. Doesn't mean that you're going to lose the data. You're not going to lose any data when you upgrade from PSA to PO. All the data will still be there. But imagine you have a field in PSA which is going to be deprecated. When upgrading, the values will be transported automatically to the new field, right? But imagine you have JavaScripts, plugins, Power BIs, views, forms, whatever, where you're using a field that in PO is going to be deprecated. Write it down. You have to rework all of this, the JavaScripts, the Power BI, to then work with the new fields. PO upgrade, we're almost there that we can click the button. Before you start the upgrade, just make sure you will have the latest PSA version installed. If you haven't, just update it. It's not a big deal. It takes like maximum 1 hour to be installed. Once you're done, so your data is clean, you know which functions you will have to rework, you can click the button and then lean back, but monitor the system. I've had different cases, like first case was error after 30 seconds, okay, because there was something in the data validation that wasn't correct. Second scenario was error after 8 hours. So I was waiting for 8 hours, monitoring it. It looked so good, and suddenly there was an error because something was wrong. This is why we have documented all the errors that can happen. When you look at the error messages that you might get, you're reading them and you're like, yeah, right, what does it tell me? Okay, sometimes they don't tell you anything in detail. So I think we have documented, oh my God, Daniel, how many errors, possible errors have we documented? Like 50, 60, I don't know, various ones. And again, this is why preparation is so important. I've hardly had cases, like from a technology perspective, where preparation is so important, right? So let's say you are clicking the button, the installation of PO starts, be it early, be it later, and you get an error. Analyze the error, fix the error, restart the installation. Hopefully you're running through. The upgrade itself is going in 5 stages, right? So the first thing that the upgrade will do is it will check the data. So whatever we've checked in the data validation, if we're fine there, it's going to run through. At some point, it's going to do the metadata update, etc. And it takes between, minimum I've seen 6 hours to 12 hours that the installation is done to be in project operations, right? Maybe you have to rerun the installation a few times. I've even had many cases where we clicked the button, had a coffee, looking at it, monitoring it, and it just went through because we were prepared, okay? So we are now in project operations. The installation ran through perfectly fine. One thing that we have to now do is configuration. So in the project parameters, there will be new things that you have to configure. So that is the first thing that you have to do. For example, there will be new schedule modes, right? So you have to select the schedule mode that is perfect for you. Another thing is the price list defaulting behavior, which you have to set in the parameters. And one thing that I was pretty surprised. There is like in PSA there was like Microsoft workflows, for example, and my expectation was I upgrade to project operations and these PSA workflows that don't apply anymore will be deactivated automatically. They're not. Okay, so they're marked as deprecated. The name will have deprecated in it, but you will have to deactivate them manually. It's not a big deal, it takes like 2 minutes, but still you have to do it. And once you've done those configurations, so the configuration part is not very big, it's not much effort, you have to convert the projects. And I was in a lucky situation with the very first upgrade that we've made still. We've done it together. We had 356 projects only that needed to be converted. And then at the same time, Daniel, my colleague, was doing an upgrade as well for another customer. And I was like, so how many projects do you have to convert? And he was like, 10K plus? And I was like, ouch, because I knew there is no default bulk convert, which means you have to open every project one by one and click the convert button and wait. And I was like, okay, 350 projects, no big deal, I'll do that. And Daniel was like, I'm not going to do that for 10,000 plus projects. So he found another solution. Just for you to know, if you have little active projects that you need to convert, it has to be done manually. If you have many projects, reach out to us, we can help you with that as well, so that you don't have to sit there for a week to just convert projects. Once we've done that, we're still not done, I'm afraid. Okay? So I told you that there will be deprecated fields, for example. So we have documented all the deprecated fields and where we find them. 3 JavaScripts, 2 Power BI reports, this form, that view, etc. So we basically go in and change these things. We exchange the old fields to the new ones on the forms, in the views, in the reports, in the plugins, in the JavaScripts, etc. If you're lucky, you don't have much to do, right? On the forms, yes, but that is an easy one. But from a development perspective, if you're lucky, you're not using those fields in plugins or JavaScripts, for example. But you have to know if you're using them or not. One more thing is security roles, and that is, it's mostly forgotten about. So there is companies that might work with the standard Microsoft security roles that are provided out of the box. But from what I've seen, maybe everyone is using custom security roles. Okay, and comparing PSA to project operations, you have to imagine that project operations is much more powerful, it's bigger, it has more features. So there will be many more settings in the security roles coming in. And you have to then, if you're using custom security roles, also update them with regards to the new PO entities that come. Okay, don't forget about that one. And then obviously you have to do proper testing with regards to that. Once we are done with the security roles, you might have scenarios where you're using the project templates when you create new projects. For that, you will have to create a Power Automate flow. It's not a big deal. You just have to do it if you're using the templates, because the template option from PSA is not available anymore. So those are the 7 stages of upgrading. And if you imagine that in the very early phase of the upgrade path being available, There was like hardly any knowledge in the industry on how to do it. Can you imagine how painful it was for me? But we learned a lot out of it, and we are professionals in it by now. So we've done many upgrades, and all went successfully. But still there can be errors during the upgrade. So you might not have the latest PSA version installed. You might have missing capacity. We covered that, like when we went through the process. So it might not happen if you checked it. You might have invalid data records. If you've done your data validation properly, it's not going to happen. Timeout, I can't promise it's not going to happen, right? So if you get a timeout, just restart the installation again. Incorrect price list item settings, that is what I mentioned earlier, just like that little flag. If you check it before you start, because Microsoft have to change that setting, but if you haven't changed it, your upgrade will not work. And then you have to wait until Microsoft worked on the ticket, so check it first. The upgrade will not work if you have to right implement it in PSA. And this is like very special, an unmanaged layer on SDK message steps. We've had that situation and we were digging into it and we were like, okay, what's the problem? What's the problem? And we finally found out that it was just like an unmanaged layer. It's hardly gonna happen, but like to have a full stack of like what the problems might be, I wrote down. So that is the main things that can happen while you are installing project operations. And again, if you have prepared everything properly, it's going to run through smoothly. You're not going to have any problems until you come to project conversion, maybe. So converting the projects, and I said it, open a project, click the convert button, wait, and then either it works or you get an error message. If you've done the data validation of the 27 steps that I mentioned, if you've done it properly, your projects will be converted, I promise you. If you haven't done it and you get an error, you might be in a situation that you cannot correct the error in project operations. Worst case scenario. Either you say bye-bye to the project and say we're going to recreate it, but normally you don't want to do that. The only option that you then have to roll back, install a backup that you are again in PSA, correct the problem, and do it all over again. So main problems are invalid data records, right? Again, having to do with data validation and invalid data structure. So the 27 steps of data validation that I mentioned are not only looking into problems that might occur due to it for the upgrade, but we're also covering the convert. I don't want anybody having installed project operation and then having one project which is fucked up, sorry, and then you have to roll back to PSA to correct one project. It's a waste of time. So data validation is key, and my colleagues are going to laugh. They hear that sentence so often from me, right? They're telling me, yeah, data validation is key. I know, like you're repeating yourself, but it's so important. So now let's say we started in dev, and our dev environment is upgraded to project operations. Is that a proper way of handling it? I have a dev that is in project operations. I have a test or QA environment that is in PSA, and I have a prod that is in PSA. Maybe not. So planning and going through the upgrade process might take some time, might take a few weeks, depending on the amount of customizations that you've made. Might even take a few months, it depends. Most important is that during the transition time, you make sure that you can still deploy hotfixes to prod. You don't want to be in a situation where you have an issue on prod and you cannot fix it because your dev environment is already upgraded to project operations. So we're going to keep a dev in PSA, we're going to keep a test environment and or a UAT environment and a prod environment in PSA. So how do we start? We're going to create a new environment. That's why we also need more capacity. And it's a full copy of our dev environment, right? It's still in PSA. We're then going to create another environment with a full copy of prod, right? The new dev environment, PSA2 it's called here, that is the one that we're going to upgrade to project operations first. The second one, if we were successful there, the second one is the test environment, which is a copy of prod. We're going to upgrade that one. Why is that so important? We want to do a test of what is going to happen when we upgrade prod environment, right? So if there's any issues while upgrading the copy of prod environment, we're going to know. We're going to know before we touch prod. If you have a UAT environment in between test and prod, also take a copy of prod and retry it there, right? The more trials you make upgrading prod, the better. Daniel, how many trials have you, how often have you tried to upgrade a copy of prod just to make sure? Several times, right? More than 30 times. Okay, that's maybe a little too much. But it's worth trying it. And it's like, from the bottom of my heart, I can only say, do not just start the upgrade in prod without having tested it. Right? It's, I'm getting a heart attack if I hear it. So once we have upgraded dev, and we have upgraded the copy of prod, which is then our new test, we have 5 environments. We have our devs, PSA and PO. We have our test, PSA and PO. We have our prod, which is currently still in PSA. We are still able to deploy hotfixes for PSA to production. And we have already tested the upgrade of our prod environment. So the last step is plan your upgrade of prod. Recommendation, plan to do it on a weekend, outside of office hours maybe. Plan a few days, in the worst case, to do it. And then you click the button in prod and send your prayers up that it works. And once you're done, you're then, and we've already done that, and we see it, I think you can't see it here, we can see it over here. We have deployed our form, views, JavaScript plugin customizations with regards to deprecated fields. We have deployed it from dev PO to test PO. Once we have upgraded prod to PO, we then also have to install our customizations to get rid of the deprecated fields. Is there questions about it? Daniel?
Just wanted to mention, due to this update of prod, just imagine, she was mentioning the out of office hours and the timeout issue. Know that Microsoft is regularly running updates on a Friday after 6 p.m. via the weekend.
Yeah.
So there probably you can run in a timeout if you try it on a Saturday. So do it in the working week.
Any other questions, or are you shocked? Is there anyone who is still working in PSA? Hi. Okay. Was that like helpful for you to understand the complexity of it.
Yeah, I know. We just informed us, and for me, for understanding in the worst case, the fallback is go back to PSA.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, as I said earlier, you should upgrade ASAP, right? But I mean, if there's issues, you cannot stop your business, right? That's, yeah, exactly. Then you would roll back. And what I always do when I do things like the upgrade, like bigger things, take a backup of each environment, a manual backup as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Any other questions, comments? No? Yes.
Are there any additional or sometimes overlooked considerations in creating a test environment to be a replica of prod?
Are there?
So when you want your test environment to be a replica of
Yes.
production, are there extra considerations to than just saying, oh, I've copied prod, I put it in test?
Well, I mean, what you should do, like, and I know where you're coming from because, like, we regularly do that for you. If you have SharePoint integrated and you take a full copy of prod, update the SharePoint link so that test doesn't link to prod, for example. So yes, obviously you have to look into those things. If you're working with a modern theme, for example, change the color so that you can differentiate between prod and test. But SharePoint and stuff like that, any interfaces, yeah, you have to make sure that if you take a full copy, that test is then not connected to prod, but you might have to change it to be connected to test. Yes, thanks, good point. Okay, so if you need help with the upgrade, reach out to us, we can help you with it. We've done it. And other than that, that's it. I was happy being able to talk about my very favorite topic. I could talk about it like the whole day. So if anybody has the need to speak about it, reach out to me. Thank you very much. Thank you.